People think revenge starts with anger. It doesn't. It starts with silence. The kind of silence that forms inside you after years of being ignored, shouted over, belittled, and treated like you're nothing more than furniture with a heartbeat. It starts the first time you swallow your pain because you don't want to make things worse. It starts the first time you tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. It starts the day you realize the people hurting you enjoy the fact that you won't fight back. My revenge didn't begin with rage. It began with survival. And survival, for me, began the day my father married the woman who would spend the next 10 years turning my life into something small and dark. Her name was Miriam. She arrived in our lives 3 years after my mother died. I was 15, old enough to remember everything. Too young to fight the adults who told me, give her a chance. She had 2 children of her own, Evan, who was 17, and Zoe, who was 13. At first they were polite, not friendly, not warm, just polite, like they'd memorized the script for temporary kindness. But kindness from them expired fast. By the time the wedding reception ended, I knew I was no longer a daughter in my own home. I was an outsider, a responsibility, a burden, a reminder of the life my father had before them. And Miriam? She made sure I never forgot it. It started with the little things. My laundry going missing, my food being eaten, my things being moved or broken or borrowed indefinitely. My father would shrug. They're just kids, he'd say. You're the oldest. Be mature. Don't make drama. I learned early that if I cried, it meant I was too sensitive. If I got angry, I was ungrateful. If I defended myself, I was causing tension. It wasn't long before I stopped talking at all. Silence was safer. Silence didn't get punished. But silence doesn't protect you forever. Especially not from someone like Miriam. She didn't yell. She didn't hit. She didn't even raise her voice. Her cruelty was colder than that. Sharp, clean, surgical. She'd whisper things like, you know your father only pities you. That's why he keeps you. You're lucky I allow you to live here. You're not like my children. Don't embarrass yourself by trying. She said these things while smiling, while cutting vegetables, while folding laundry. So at the dinner table, she could put a warm hand on my shoulder and say sweetly, she's been distant lately. I'm worried about her mental health. And my father would nod, concerned, thinking his wife was a saint. Her children followed her lead. Evan became the king of mocking me when our father wasn't home. Why do you eat like that? Why do you walk like that? Why does your face look like that? Why can't you just disappear? Zoe, at 13, weaponized social isolation the way some people breathe. She'd invite everyone in the neighborhood for sleepovers and tell them to ignore me. She spread rumors that I was creepy and desperate for attention. I spent most nights in my room, studying, drawing, writing, trying to create a world inside my head because the one outside it didn't feel like mine anymore. The house was never loud, but it was never safe either. I learned to walk without footsteps, talk without raising my voice, cry without making a sound, because everything I did, every breath, every mistake, became ammunition. You're exhausting. You're dramatic. You're difficult. You're lucky to have us. Lucky, lucky, lucky. I heard that word so much I started to believe it. But surviving is not living. Not really. And one day, survival wasn't enough. Because terror escalates. And theirs did. When I turned 17, my father signed a loan in Evan's name, one he didn't qualify for. I only found out because I overheard a phone call. Oh, she won't need that money. I'm planning her future differently. My future. Handled without me. Like I was livestock and not a person. When I confronted my father, he looked ashamed. But not enough to change anything. You're part of this family, he said softly. We help each other. Don't ruin the peace. Ruin the peace. As if peace had ever been offered to me. As if silence and obedience were peace. That's when I knew. I had no protector in this house. No advocate. No defender. If I didn't save myself, no one would. But I didn't know how to escape. Not then. Not yet. I stayed 2 more years. 2 more years of isolation. 2 more years of manipulation. 2 more years of hearing Miriam's voice in my head, even when she wasn't speaking. But you can only push someone so far before they break. And breaking? Breaking isn't always collapse. Sometimes breaking means awakening. It means stepping back and seeing clearly for the first time. It means deciding with cold clarity. When I leave, I will never be powerless again. And what they did next ensured that my revenge, my quiet, devastating, life-ruining revenge, would one day be justified. If anyone had told me that one day I'd be the reason my stepmother's perfect world collapsed, I would have laughed. Back then, she was untouchable. She had the house. She had my father. She had her 2 golden children. She had the neighbors believing she was a saint. And I was the problem, the ungrateful stepdaughter, the difficult one, the one she said she tolerated out of love for my father. For 10 years, she made my life a slow-burning hell. Not with bruises. Not with screaming, at least, not when anyone could hear. She destroyed me with whispers, with little digs, with lies that looked like concern. She turned everyone around me into an audience. And I was the villain in her story. I'm not telling this for pity. I'm telling it because this is the story of how, after 10 years of being her target, I took my power back. Not by laying a hand on her. Not by becoming like her. By living long enough to see her own lies swallow her whole, and by making sure the truth finally had a microphone. My life before her wasn't perfect. But it was simple. It was just me and my dad in a small, slightly cluttered house that smelled like coffee and old paper. He was a quiet man, a school teacher who loved books more than people, and me more than anything. We didn't have much, but we had routines. Saturday pancakes. Friday night movies. Long car rides where we'd just drive with no destination, listening to old songs and making up ridiculous stories about the people in passing cars. My mother left when I was 5. No dramatic scandal. She just left. Some people leave quietly, like a door you didn't realize had shut until the room got cold. Dad tried to be both parents. He wasn't perfect, but he tried. We were okay. We were enough. Then he met her. Her name was Marissa. She came into our lives like a soft blur, at first just a woman he worked with, then a friend, then someone who understood him. She was beautiful in that polished, curated way, not a hair out of place, nails always done, clothes coordinated like magazine spreads. She smelled like expensive perfume and new leather handbags. The first time I met her, she knelt down to my level, smiled too widely, and said, "You must be our girl." I remember thinking, "Our? Whose R am I exactly?" I was 12, old enough to recognize when a smile didn't reach someone's eyes. It started small. She helped out around the house. She bought new curtains, then new dishes, then new rules. No shoes in the house. Don't leave your school bag in the living room. Don't interrupt when adults are talking. Don't talk back, it's disrespectful. They weren't evil rules. They just weren't ours. Then came the sleepovers with her kids, Evan and Chloe. They were a few years younger than me. Perfectly dressed. Perfectly behaved when adults were watching. To everyone else, they were sweet. To me, they were something else. They took over my room just for weekends. Then their toys took over the living room. Then their clothes filled half of my closet. One night, I came back from the bathroom to find Chloe flipping through my diary. When I snatched it from her, she shrieked like I'd hit her. Marissa came running. "What is wrong with you?" she hissed at me, grabbing Chloe and holding her like a wounded puppy. She was just curious. She was reading my diary, I said. Marissa's eyes went cold. "You need to learn how to share. You're not the only child anymore." That sentence was the beginning of the end. You're not the only child anymore. Translation. You're not special here. You're not first. You are now one of many. And you are the most inconvenient of them all. They got married when I was 13. The wedding was a small, elegant thing at a country club. Her idea, obviously. I wore a dress she picked. Stood where she told me. Smiled when she pointed the camera. Everyone said we looked like a beautiful blended family. Inside, I felt like a prop. Her speech at the reception was perfect. She thanked my father for trusting her with his heart and his daughter. She thanked her own children for welcoming a new sister. She thanked God for giving her the family she always dreamed of. People cried. Dad cried. I felt dizzy. She looked at me when she said daughter. But her eyes were warning me. Play along. Don't ruin this. After the wedding, she moved in officially. Her furniture. Her rules. Her calendar on the fridge, color-coded with the kids' activities, his meetings, her social events. I didn't have a color. I just existed in the margins in the white space around their schedules. In public, she doted on me. "Oh, this is my girl," she'd say at parties. "She's so bright. She's so strong. She's had it so hard, but we're helping her adjust." And people would look at her like she was a heroine. Then we'd go home, and the mask would come off. "Your room is a mess. You're so ungrateful. Do you know how lucky you are that I stayed?" The first time she slapped me, it wasn't even over something big. I had forgotten to take the chicken out of the freezer. She didn't hit me hard, just enough. Enough to show me what she was capable of when my father wasn't around. I didn't tell him. He was finally happy. He laughed again. The house looked nicer. We had more money. He seemed lighter. I convinced myself I could handle it, that I could absorb the damage to protect him. That's what children of complicated parents do. We become human shields. People assume terror means screaming, throwing things, wild violence. Sometimes it is. But the terror I lived through was subtle. It was 1,000 little cuts. Coming home to hear her on the phone whispering, "She's troubled. I think she has mental issues. But I'm trying my hardest. I just don't know how much longer I can deal with her attitude." Watching her accidentally leave pamphlets about boarding schools on the kitchen counter. Hearing from teachers that your stepmother says you're under a lot of stress, is everything okay at home? With that look that already believed the worst version of me. being blamed for things I didn't do. If something broke, I had done it. If Chloe cried, I had made her. If Evan got into trouble at school, it was because I was a bad influence. She never yelled at them in front of my father, but she screamed at me behind closed doors. You'll never be anything. I'm the reason this house looks like it does. Without me, your father would still be drowning in his own sadness, and you'd be wearing the same 2 shirts. Show some gratitude. We took you in. Remember that. Took me in. Like I wasn't here first. Like I wasn't his child before she even knew his name. The worst part? She was subtle enough that telling anyone would have made me sound dramatic. No bruises. No hospital visits. Just constant, quiet humiliation. When I spoke up once, just once, to my father, I watched him recoil like I'd slapped him. Marissa is trying, he said, tired. You know she loves you. She's under a lot of pressure with work and with Chloe and Evan. Maybe you two just need to find a way to get along. And in that moment I knew. No one was coming to save me. No one was going to see what she was. Not until it was too late. So I made myself a promise that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I whispered to myself, just survive. Get through school. Get away. Build a life. One day the truth will matter more than her performance. I didn't know how that would happen. I just knew I couldn't let her break me. I left home 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. No screaming goodbye. No blown-up confrontation. Just a quiet backpack, a small suitcase, and a scholarship letter from a university 3 hours away. She had helped me apply, her way of pushing me out faster. The last morning, she hugged me in front of my father. I'm so proud of you, she said loud enough for him to hear. Then she whispered in my ear, I hope you find someone patient enough to tolerate you. Because not everyone will. I pulled back and looked at her. For the first time in years, I didn't look down. I met her eyes and smiled. Thank you for everything, I said. And for the first time in her life, she didn't know what I meant. I meant, thank you for teaching me exactly what kind of person I never want to be. Thank you for showing me what manipulation looks like up close. Thank you for giving me a front row seat to the performance I would one day tear apart. My father cried when I left. He gripped me so tightly my shoulders hurt. Call me, he said. Every day if you can. I nodded. I meant it. Because I loved him. Even if he hadn't protected me the way he should have. Love is never simple. College saved me. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet, consistent way. For the first time in my life, I had control over my schedule. Over my room. Over who I spent time with. No one there knew I was the problem child. I was just me. No one saw me through a filter. I studied psychology and then later moved into organizational behavior. Ironic, given how disorganized my childhood had been emotionally. I learned about narcissism, gaslighting, emotional abuse, projection. And as I read case studies, listened to lectures, and watched videos, my childhood clicked into place. She wasn't a mystery anymore. She was a pattern. She was a textbook. I started therapy. At first, I talked about everything but her. My therapist eventually asked, tell me about your stepmother. Just hearing the word made my throat tighten. But week after week, I unspooled the story. All the little cruelties, the subtle digs, the way she had twisted my father. And my therapist said something that would define the next decade for me. You survived someone who needed you to be small to feel big. The most powerful thing you can do is live a life she can't claim credit for and can't control. So I focused on that. I got internships, worked 2 jobs at once, graduated at the top of my class, built a small career in HR and conflict resolution. I made friends who respected me. I rented my first apartment. I bought my first couch with money I earned myself. I called my father every week. He still sounded tired. I asked about him, about work, about his health. He always ended with, Marissa is doing her best. Like he needed me to approve of her still. I never did. But I didn't fight. I just lived. Quiet revenge. The kind where you become someone nobody expected you to become. The turning point came 10 years after she married my father. I was 23. Working at a mid-sized company in the city, helping with internal investigations, mediation, and employee relations. One afternoon, I got a call from my father's number. But it wasn't him. It was Chloe. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Can you come? She asked. My heart dropped. What happened? Silence. Then, Dad collapsed. I drove home that night shaking. Every mile felt like a year. By the time I reached the hospital, my chest hurt from holding my breath. He was stable. A mild heart attack, the doctors said. Too much stress. He'd need rest, treatment, lifestyle changes. I sat by his bed and watched him sleep. The man who had once seemed invincible now looked fragile, small, mortal. I felt something sharp and cold slide into my resolve. If he died under her spell, under her version of the story, I would never forgive myself. I walked out into the hallway, needing air. And that's when I heard it. Marissa, talking to a nurse, her voice dripping with concern. Yes, he pushes himself too hard, she said. I keep telling him to take a break, but he insists on working overtime. I'm managing the finances, the kids, the house. It's a lot, but I do what I can. The nurse murmured something sympathetic. Then Marissa added, it's been especially hard since his daughter moved out. She barely visits. He worries she doesn't love him anymore. I stopped walking. I felt my hands curl into fists. She was still doing it. Still rewriting reality. Still painting herself as the victim, as the savior. The nurse said something about support. Then Marissa sighed dramatically. I've had to take on extra work just to keep us from falling behind, she said. I'm the only stable one around here. Extra work. Funny. Because I knew for a fact that my father's salary and pension could comfortably sustain the family. And I had seen her Instagram. The vacations. The spa days. The designer bags. Something wasn't adding up. For the first time, I didn't just feel hurt. I felt curious. Professionally. Personally. Deeply. Something was off. And this time, I had skills. It started with small questions. Asked my father, gently, about their finances. He shrugged. Marissa handles it, he said. She's better with numbers than I am. That was the first red flag. He'd always handled our money carefully, when it was just us. The second red flag was the pile of bills I saw on the kitchen counter when I stopped by the house to grab some clothes for him. Past due notices. Credit cards with his name. Store cards he'd never use. Loan statements. All managed by Marissa. I didn't confront her. Not yet. She smiled when she saw me. A thin smile. Nice of you to drop by, she said, voice sweet as poison. My old room was now a storage closet. My photos were gone from the hallway. She had scrubbed me out of the house like a stain. But what she hadn't scrubbed, apparently, were the financial paper trails she didn't expect anyone to read. Back at my apartment, I laid the copies I'd discreetly photographed on my coffee table. Then I did what I had been trained to do. I started looking for patterns. Same stores. Same dates. Large purchases right before posts on her social media showing gifts from my loving husband. Credit cards opened within months of their wedding. Balances that never dropped. A personal loan taken out in his name for home improvements that I never saw. I started to suspect what I had never allowed myself to consider. She wasn't just emotionally abusive. She was financially draining him. Slowly. Steadily. Bleeding him dry while telling everyone she was the one holding him together. And in that moment, something quiet in me hardened. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings anymore. This was about my father's future. His house. His retirement. His stability. This was about justice. Not just revenge. 10 years with her had taught me one thing. You cannot confront a practiced liar with feelings. You confront them with facts. Documented. Organized. Undeniable. I didn't hack anything. I didn't break into anything. I just watched. I stayed at the house more while my father recovered. I saw her throw away receipts. I picked them out of the trash when she wasn't around. I watched her log in to online shopping accounts and forget to log out. I didn't snoop through messages. I didn't need to. The numbers were enough. Debt on debt. Cards maxed out, then quietly paid off with personal loans, then maxed again. All while she lectured him about cutting back. She had turned him into the villain in a story where she was the suffering wife carrying everything. In reality, she was the one loading bricks onto his back. I took everything I found to a financial advisor my friend recommended. I laid it out. He looked at the numbers and whistled low. Your father is in serious trouble, he said. Whoever is handling this is either extremely reckless or extremely selfish. Both, I said. He showed me how to summarize it clearly. No drama, just evidence. And then he said the thing that finally pushed me over the edge. If this continues, he could lose the house in a few years. The house. The only real thing he ever owned. The place that still had my height marks on the doorframe, even if Marissa had tried to paint over them. I walked out of that office with a folder in my hand and a burning calm inside me. This was it. My revenge was not going to be screaming or name-calling. It was going to be truth. In the open. Where lies couldn't hide behind polite smiles. I chose a Saturday afternoon. Neutral. Ordinary. The twins, not really twins, but that's what everyone called Evan and Chloe, were at friends' houses. It was just me, my father, and Marissa. I made coffee. Set it on the table. Laid out the folder. My father looked confused. What's this? He asked. Something we need to talk about, I said quietly. Marissa's eyes flicked to the papers. Then to me. She smiled. You're always so dramatic, aren't you? She said, laughing softly. Is this another one of your attempts to turn your father against me? I didn't respond. I opened the folder. On top, I had printed out a simple statement from the financial advisor, a summary, not an attack. I slid it to my father. He started reading. I watched his face. At first, confusion. Then disbelief. Then pain. His hand trembled. What is this? He whispered. Debt in your name, I said quietly. Credit cards. Loans. Store purchases you never made. All tracked. All here. He looked at Marissa. Is this true? She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, for God's sake, she said. She's twisting things. You know I handle the finances. I've been paying bills, managing everything while you work. I've only ever done my best for this family. Dad's voice was weak. How much do we owe? Her eyes flashed. That's not the point, she snapped. The point is that your daughter has always had it out for me. She resents me. She always has. And now she's trying to destroy what we've built. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I pulled out the last page. A photo of her social media posts, lined up with the dates of large charges. Designer bags. Weekend getaways. Spa treatments. Did he ask you to buy these? I asked. She glared at me. How dare you? Did he approve the loan in his name? I continued. He trusted me, she said. He let me handle things. Because, unlike you, I'm an adult. I looked at my father. Did you know about any of this? He shook his head. Slowly. Almost like it pained him to move. Then he said, quietly, Marissa, did you take out a loan in my name? Silence. A long one. Then she snapped. You never complained when the house looked good, did you? You never complained when I kept food on the table, hosted your colleagues, made us look presentable. Someone has to maintain standards, and you certainly weren't doing it. He stared at her. With something I had never seen before. Not adoration. Not confusion. Clarity. And disappointment, so deep it made my chest ache. You lied to me, he whispered. You've always needed someone to blame, she shot back. First your ex-wife, then your grief, now me. Maybe take some responsibility for once. She grabbed her bag. You two deserve each other, she spat, looking between us. Ungrateful. Then she left the house, slamming the door hard enough to shake the frames. The silence she left behind was thick. Dad stared at the table. His eyes were glassy. I'm so sorry, he said. I moved around the table and hugged him. Tight. For what? I whispered. For not seeing it sooner, he choked. For not believing you when you tried to warn me. For letting her. I stopped him. You loved the version of her she showed you, I said. That's not a crime. That's what manipulators do. They pick good people and convince them they're the problem. He sobbed. For the first time since I was a child, I held him like he used to hold me. And in that moment, my revenge stopped feeling like revenge. It felt like rescue. For both of us. Leaving was her choice. But the fallout was ours to deal with. We met with lawyers. We restructured his debts. We sold some things he didn't need. We downsized the car. It was hard. Messy. Embarrassing for him. But it was honest. The kids, her kids, stayed with her at first. For a while, they didn't speak to us. She told them her version of the story. That I had sabotaged their family. That I had turned their father against their mother. They believed her. Of course they did. They were teenagers by then. Old enough to choose sides. Young enough to choose the easiest story. It hurt. Because, regardless of everything, I had grown up with them. I had seen their first heartbreaks. Heard their secrets. Watched them sleep on car rides, mouths open, safe. They weren't my enemies. They were just caught in the same web I had escaped. So I let them go. For a while. I focused on helping my father rebuild. We set up automatic payments. We cut her access to his accounts. We filed fraud alerts where necessary. And slowly, we laughed again. In small ways. He visited my apartment sometimes. I cooked for him. We watched movies. He said, I forgot what quiet felt like. Real quiet. Not the kind that hides things. I said, me too. And that was enough. Revenge, I've learned, rarely looks like a dramatic explosion. It looks like someone's lies catching up when they run out of people to blame. 2 years after she left, I heard about her again. Not from her. From Evan. He showed up at my apartment one evening. Taller. Thinner. Shoulders slumped like he was carrying something heavy. Can we talk? He asked. I let him in. He sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea he barely drank. Then he said, Mom needs money. I didn't react. He kept talking. She lost her job, he said. And there were some issues with her last company. Something about misusing funds. She says they're lying. But he trailed off. I looked at him. For the first time I saw it. The doubt. The crack in the blind loyalty. The space where his own observations didn't match her narrative anymore. Did she ask you to come here? I asked gently. He swallowed. Yes, he admitted. She said you owe her for how she took care of you. She said Dad would have been a disaster without her, and that you're the reason everything fell apart. I sighed. I didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. Do you believe that? I asked. He stared at his tea. Then, quietly, I don't know what to believe anymore. So I told him the truth. Not with venom. Not with glee. Just plainly. I told him about the debt. The loans. The accounts. The emotional manipulation. I showed him the folder, the same one I showed my father. He read in silence. At one point, his lower lip trembled. She always said you were dramatic, he whispered, that you made things up to get attention. I smiled sadly. That's what abusers say about the people who see them, I said. He nodded slowly. Then he asked, why didn't you destroy her? You had all this. You could have ruined her in court, online, everywhere. I took a breath. Because I didn't want to spend my life focused on her, I said. I wanted to build something that had nothing to do with her. And because she would have dragged all of you down with her. He looked up sharply, understanding. She would have used us as shields. Yes, I said. Like she always does. He wiped his eyes. Chloe's having a hard time, he admitted. She's angry all the time. She hates you. But she's also starting to hate Mom. She doesn't know where to put it. I nodded. Tell her this, I said softly. When she's ready to hear it. I'm not the enemy. The lies are. He didn't answer. But he left with the folder. And I knew then that the story was finally changing. Not because I forced it. Because the truth had started to speak in more than one voice. Years passed. I moved up in my career. I started consulting for companies on workplace toxicity, how to recognize manipulative behaviors, how to protect vulnerable people. I built a life where my voice mattered, where my boundaries were respected. My father's health stabilized. We sold the old house eventually. Too many ghosts. We bought him a small place near a lake. He planted a garden. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch and drink tea while the sun set. One evening, he said, you saved my life. I shook my head. No, I said. You chose to see the truth. I just pointed at it. He smiled. You always were better at seeing than I was. I laughed. 10 years of training, I said. He winced. I still hate myself for it, he murmured. I looked at him. Don't, I said. If you spend the rest of your life punishing yourself, then she still wins. Live well. That's the real revenge. He nodded. We watched the light fade together. Quiet. Whole. Free. People always ask, did you ever talk to her again? Did she ever apologize? The short answer? Yes, I saw her again. No, she didn't apologize. I ran into her at a grocery store of all places. She looked smaller. The expensive gloss was still there. Makeup, clothes, but the confidence was cracked. Her eyes darted around like she was expecting criticism at any moment. When she saw me, she froze. For the first time, she looked like the one who'd been caught. She recovered quickly. Of course she did. She pasted on that familiar smile. Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter, she said. You must be very proud of yourself. I looked at her. Really looked. I didn't feel rage. Or fear. Or the old, familiar shame. Just distance. Hi, Marissa, I said. We stood in the aisle between canned soup and pasta. 10 years of history condensing into one moment. You turned him against me, she said suddenly. After everything I did. After all I sacrificed. You ruined my life. I tilted my head. No, I said calmly. You ruined your life the moment you decided control was more important than love. She scoffed. You're so dramatic. You always have been. I smiled. And you're still pretending that none of this was your doing, I said. For a split second, something like doubt flashed across her face. Then she muttered, you'll see. One day your perfect little world will fall apart too. I shrugged. Maybe it will, I said. But if it does, it'll be because of my choices. Not because I lied to everyone who loved me. She sneered and pushed past me. I watched her walk away. The power she once had over me was gone. Completely. And that, right there, was my real revenge. Not the debt. Not the confrontation. Freedom. I had built a life where her opinion meant nothing. Where who I was had nothing to do with who she said I was. People hear my story and expect some kind of cinematic takedown. They want a moment where she's publicly humiliated. Where everyone gasps and turns on her. But life is messier and smaller than movies. The truth is, my revenge wasn't one moment. It was a million small choices. Choosing to leave when I was old enough. Choosing to build a career that made me strong instead of bitter. Choosing to gather evidence calmly instead of screaming into the wind. Choosing to protect my father with truth instead of silently resenting him. Choosing not to become like her, even when I had every excuse to. Did her life fall apart? Yeah. She lost jobs, burned relationships, alienated her own children so badly they eventually saw through her. Not because I cursed her, because she built her life on manipulation. And that foundation always cracks. Eventually. My part in it was simply not letting her keep using my father. Pulling the curtain back. Standing in the truth long enough that it couldn't be dismissed as teenage drama. Sometimes the best revenge is not destroying someone. It's refusing to carry the shame they put on you. Handing it back to them and saying, this was yours, not mine. I'm done. If you're listening to this and you're still in a house like the one I grew up in, if you're still being treated like the problem child, the dramatic one, the ungrateful one, if someone in your life is rewriting your story in front of an audience, I can't tell you to blow up your life. I can't tell you to confront them today. I can't give you a quick fix. But I can tell you this. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. And you are not what they say you are. Start with this. Write things down. Tell someone safe. Make a plan. Protect yourself. And when you can leave, leave. Build something they can't touch. The most devastating thing you can ever do to someone who tried to ruin you is to live well, to laugh again, to trust again, to love again. Not them. Yourself. The people who deserve you. My stepmother and her children terrorized me for 10 years. But the story didn't end there. I took my life back. I helped my father take his back. I refused to be the villain in her script. And now I get to write my own. That's how I got my revenge. Not with violence. Not with cruelty. But with truth. With boundaries. With a life that no longer bends around her shadow. And, honestly, that hurts her more than anything I could have done. Because the one thing she always wanted was my attention. And now, she doesn't exist in my world. Unless I choose to turn this camera on and use our past to remind someone else. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to heal. And you are allowed to outgrow the people who tried to keep you small.